So Peter, I'm going to ask you a couple questions while we're waiting for a few to come in. So so you were a fellow in 2019, a few years ago, pre-pandemic. Um, think about for a minute, picture yourself 2 weeks before your application was due. He's smiling. What advice would you give to people who are at the same point, 2 weeks before the application's due? What would you say? What would you have told your earlier self to do?
Um, First of all, definitely apply. I mean, I know some of you might still be on the fence or might be like, I'm pulling something together last minute and I'm not going to make it in time. Or, I would say just get it in. I mean, my approach to applications, to grant writing in general, et cetera, is, apply this year, even if you feel like you're throwing things at the wall, and then that does nothing except sort of help solidify things for next year if you don't get it this year, et cetera. But you don't, what's the, I shouldn't be talking about the lottery, but it's, what is it? You don't win if you don't play.
Right.
So do apply. You have no idea what the applicant pool looks like. You might as well certainly get something in. The other thing I would say is, I recall doing a lot of research, as far as and I don't know what the application looks like these days, but for me, I definitely included, I wanted to demonstrate knowledge. I wanted to demonstrate there are people at Stanford that I have already looked up that I am very excited to talk to. There are fellows in previous cohorts whose work lines up with mine, who I'm looking forward to tapping into as a resource, building off of their work, talking with specificity about how all of that fed into what I was thinking about and what I was doing. I think those are the two sort of main things off the top of my head.
Those are great ones. Did you have anybody, did you bounce your application off anybody?
I
Or
did.
have anybody help you proof it or any of that?
Yeah. I certainly had, well, I'm very lucky to have started an organization with someone who came from being a copy editor. So, I
And okay,
had,
and copy editor friend is a good thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a friend look at it. I had my wife look at it, that kind of thing, just to sort of double check, am I making sense here? So, yeah.
Great. Okay, some questions are coming in. One for you, Peter. It says, you've been doing great work, Peter. You'll probably cover this, but I'd love to hear if JSK completely changed the direction you were heading, or did it mainly help you with the direction you wanted to go?
That is a great question, and thank you for the compliment. Whoever wrote that, I'll take a look. But yeah, so it's a great question because right now I'm an editor at ProPublica, and I've been building up to that over the last couple of years. I had no sense that that's where my life was headed when I was in the fellowship, but the fellowship really helped provide me with a lot of skills, a lot of confidence, a lot of sort of leadership abilities that helped get me to this point. So I went into the fellowship very much geared towards building my own nonprofit, the everyday projects which Dawn mentioned, and almost everything I did was geared around that. I took classes at the business school. I, took, that program specifically. I had a sort of like business models club that I started with a couple of the other fellows, where we were all had our own sort of versions of startups that we were poking holes in each other's business models and brainstorm, all this stuff that was geared towards that. At the same time, while I come from photography and photo editing, I have always, always, always been a big comic book, graphic novel, illustration fan. And so I did the Stanford graphic novel project, which is a two-quarter class during which you write and publish a graphic novel, a nonfiction graphic novel. So it really dovetailed with our journalism background in a big way. Anyways, the point being, all of those skills then helped me get into this role at ProPublica, where I'm not just doing photography, but I am doing comic books, I'm doing graphic novels, I'm commissioning illustrators, et cetera. And while none of that was on my mind at the time, all of the skills were there, and I spent the next couple of years developing my nonprofit. And then when I wanted to pivot into a new phase in my career, so much of it came from what the skills I acquired during the fellowship for sure.
Great. Thanks, Peter. And I was going to ask you about the graphic novel project because there's things like that at Stanford that, I don't know if you knew it existed before you applied or not.
I did
But
not.
just
I
you
did not.
didn't. Yeah. So how did you find it? Do you remember?
I mean, it was very fortuitous because it was, my favorite thing I did there. I mean, the book was then picked up by Haymarket. It's, you can buy it in there's a bookstore 2 blocks down the street where I just stumbled onto it and was amazed to see it on the shelf.
Oh, that's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, it was very cool. But how did I find it? It was like dumb luck of poking through the course catalog once we got to Stanford, and they had like an application deadline that I had already missed, so I panicked and I wrote to them, but they were like very thrilled to have a JSK, and there were 2 of us in the class, and actually, um, the project that we did is on solitary confinement in California prisons, and it was based off of the reporting of Sarah Short, who was another JSK Fellow who took the class
Yeah.
with me. So it
Yeah.
was just a lot of amazing things came together.
So that's one example, a great example so at Stanford, many professors and programs know about the fellowship, and so they are, yeah, eager to have you, right? I mean, yeah, you get an occasional cranky person. Okay, that's life. But mostly people are very like, wow, we could have you in our class. That would be fantastic. So that was it. They let you beat the deadline. Okay, that's great. I'm going to answer
Yeah, and I would
yeah,
just
go
to
ahead.
add, sorry, one quick
Yeah,
point to that is
yeah,
that not only do people get excited about having you in the class, but professors who, they weren't necessarily teaching a relevant class or whatever, but professors that I would write to and say, can I get coffee and pick your brain? They always said yes. And in fact, some of the fellows did more of that than
yeah.
actually taking classes. So it's a choose your own adventure in that way. But yes, people are very excited to have you and chat with you and so on.
Yeah, and that's another good point, which is classes are great. There's fantastic classes, but that's usually not the only way, or maybe even the most common way fellows use Stanford, right? So you'd mentioned that fellows, some of them didn't take classes, or they had coffee with professors, or they got together, and so that's a way that happens. That's great. Okay, I'm gonna tackle a few questions for me. Let's see, what does your professional development portion entail? I'm assuming it means us, the JSK Fellowships. So we are, as I mentioned, individual coaching. So every fellow gets one of us as a director as a professional personal coach and mentor. And so with that, regular meetings with you to see where you are in your career and in your JSK fellowship and what you would like to be doing. And then we have a number of really important, and we've developed these over time, leadership workshops, skills workshops. There's great graduate school of businesses, as Peter mentioned. We have someone from the GSB who comes and does a multi-part leadership workshop for fellows on their leadership skills and their personality and how they can really be used and grow that part of themselves. We every year look to increase and evolve our programming on things like public speaking and effective communication and storytelling and ways to help you with that. So those are some of the ways, and happy to talk more if people have other questions about that. Okay, let's see. I'm interested in understanding how firm the project pitch needs to be before applying to JSK. I have a good sense of what I'd like to accomplish. It's a bit unwieldy. That's not, that's so common. But I'm not sure what shape or form these project pitches should take. Any advice? So a couple of things. There's a good description on our FAQ, which I would urge you to go to about this, but I'll briefly say that we want you to have, if you have an idea, it should be just not like, oh, yesterday I thought, wow, I think I'd like to save the business model for journalism. So I on my own, I'm going to do that. And you haven't ever thought about it or had experience with it. So something that you've been thinking about, it's been bubbling up for you. You have done some experiments with, perhaps you have talked to people about. So you know what else is being done in the field, which is what Peter mentioned, what else is already out there. And then try to think about an entry point. I sometimes say people try to boil the ocean with their ideas. So think about making it more bite-sized, but important. And where would you start? What would you like to start with that project? Okay, let's see. Do most fellows have staff positions at publications, or are freelancers also competitive applicants? Yes. We do not need to have a staff position at uh, a organization. I'm thinking, Peter, in your class, I mean, people were coming from all kinds of places. So we had people who certainly had their own startup nonprofit. We had people who were coming from organizations that they had a role in an organization, and freelancers, right? There was quite the rest. And that's pretty common every year. So it's more just the competitiveness is how are you going to use your year, and what are you going to do afterwards? Okay. Let's see. Um, any insight you can offer for return applicants? If the nature of their project is similar to an application previous year, what are you looking for? And this is interesting. I'd have to think back to your class, Peter, but every class has had somebody who applied on their second or third time, every single class in 20 years. And that is because persistence is a great journalism value. And we only have so many spots. So we can't fit everybody in every year who's fantastic. So we encourage people to apply again, but don't just, you know, dust off your old application and send it in and not change anything, because which you've changed, hopefully your thinking has grown and evolved over the year. And so you're going to want to have what things affected you and impacted you and your thinking over the year be reflected in your application. So that's what I would suggest. Okay. Peter, here's one for you. Thanks for sharing your experience. Did you find it was easy getting back into a job after taking time off for the fellowship?
Well, I'm not necessarily the best person to ask because I was coming from a life as a freelance photojournalist and running my own nonprofit, which I tried to, not work on while I was, I mean, obviously, like I said earlier, my fellowship was very much about developing the nonprofit, but I was trying not to do the day-to-day stuff while I was there.
Right.
But anyways, it was waiting for me when I came back, so to speak. But I will say that I think the JSK experience helped me when I then moved into getting a staff position, first at NPR and then ProPublica. And I also think it helped, a lot of people that came out of our fellowship. um, I could think of a couple examples where the project they were working on at the fellowship, they then got hired as staff at other publications, sort of based on showing that idea of like, here's what I've been working on. And so, I can't speak to the job market overall, but I would say it can do nothing but help.
Great. Here's a question for me. If one's project and search for answers is geared towards solving a challenge in opinion journalism as opposed to straight news reporting, would it mitigate against the application's chances in any way? No. Short answer. If you give us a compelling reason why this is a great project to work on and how it's going to help journalism, that's fantastic. Okay. Lots of questions coming in. Let me find one here. Can you apply with a team slash with a project you'd want to execute on a team? So the first part, no. We want people to apply individually because we're creating a cohort, a class of people who are all coming to the class themselves, and they're not bringing somebody with them already. Certainly what you're learning in your fellowship experience could be shared with a team back home that you're working with, which has been done a lot. Although I know a number of fellows have taken some of the experiences and some of the workshopping and shared it with their team, or there's teamwork that happens within the fellowship, right? So Peter mentioned the graphic novel project where there was two fellows from the class working together on that. also, Peter, you mentioned, your business models group that you put together, and that met regularly, right? As a kind of a ad hoc.
Yeah, once a week or so. We also had a writing group towards the end that we were all working on different writing there were just a few different more ad hoc things that
Yeah,
sprung that way.
yeah. So no, we don't want people to apply as a team, but there are teamwork benefits out of being a fellow. Okay, here is the one I love. I would be applying with an 11-year-old son. What assistance is offered in finding schools for fellows with children? So first of all, we are a family-friendly program. We love having people bring their spouses, partners, and children. Sometimes the kids, it's amazing to see the kids experience both in US and international children who are there's this cohort of JSK kids who spend time together and then they all want to see each other for the rest of their lives. So that's a benefit. Yes, so finding schools for fellows. So the schools are decided by where you live for elementary school. And so Mary Beth Bach, who's on our team, is helping fellows with kids, once they're getting a place to live, checking out what's going on with the school and how that works for admission. So yes, we help on that. Okay. Peter, more questions for Peter. I love this. What was something you learned you didn't expect going into your fellowship?
Ooh, that is a good question. I have to say, the first thing that comes to mind is that I learned that there is no silver bullet. I think as a photojournalist, I often felt like I was a bit outside of sort of a lot of mainstream journalism conversations, and it made me feel like, okay, I'm trying to get this nonprofit off the ground, and if I can just get inside, I'll figure it all out. And then I got inside, and instead of sort of finding the solution, I found a lot of incredible people, a lot of means of enhancing my own skills and my own career. But what am I trying to say? I mean, I think I found that that this is a difficult time in journalism, and none of us should be hard on ourselves if our startups are not taking off, but that there are sort of different creative ways that we can all learn from in unexpected places.
That tees up very nicely. Thank you, Peter, for something else I want to ask you about, which was you did a fellows do Medium posts, which blog posts every quarter. That's one of the expectations. So every fellow does one. I mentioned at the top of this webinar about that. And you did one, and also a short video that was off of that was called Lessons for a Creative Life. And we'll put a link to that video, Peter's video, on our YouTube channel, by the way, if those of you would like to go back and look at that. So tell me a little bit about that, some of the lessons. One of the things you just said at the top here was that, there's no magic bullet. But there were things that you learned. I just thought maybe it'd be fun to highlight a few of those that were some epiphanies for you, that I thought were really made this fellowship and journalism and the world we're in more accessible for creative people.
Yeah, I mean, my first two Medium posts out of the three that we did one per quarter and we're there for 3 quarters. They were much more about the work. And then on my way out, I wanted to do this last one that was like, wow, I feel a lot healthier, a lot better than I, have in my own sort of sitting at home journalism life prior to the fellowship. And so I wanted to just do a quick sort of listicle style of some of those things. So, I mean, some of them are, so simple, but like, do we actually do them? Things like, there's a couple of them on the Medium posts that are like, leave the house, exercise, meditate, make time for these things. And those are very simple. But I mean, there were other things that were like setting myself up for success, putting myself in situations where success felt possible, like getting out of the daily grind and focusing on like big picture. Does success feel possible? Finding community, which I cannot emphasize enough how much my group got community out of each other, our cohort. We are still very close to this day. So yeah, I mean, those are just a couple of them. And, some of them I unlocked, you'll see in the Medium post, I did an improv class, and that was really, to just sort of like shake myself up and feel like I could sort of dare to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more, outside of the box in my day-to-day life. And I think it really helped. So
That's great. I
yeah.
Just thinking about a couple things you said, tease up a nice question here too. So somebody's asking about what's the day-to-day experience of being a fellow? What kinds of activities, events, classes, research are you doing? And let me just say, before you answer, Peter, real quickly, we have on our Becoming a Fellow page, the Fellowship Experience. There's a page on that talks about some of the things that fellows do and some of the kind of general buckets of things. But what were days like for you? What did you spend your time doing? And Janelle too, our connection to the
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess starting with classes, which is maybe the wrong place to start, and I'll tell you why, but starting with classes, I really wanted to develop skills, and I really wanted to, like I said, sort of expand my creativity. And then I also wanted to sort of use this time, like I'm getting paid to think. I should also take care of my body, like exercise in ways that I didn't never felt like I had time for prior to that. So the enhancing my skills, a lot of that was the business classes and learning to more effective communication, those kinds of things. The creativity, like I said, the graphic novel class, the improv class, and then I did rock climbing classes. I made use of Stanford's amazing pool and those facilities, and it's just like I mean, Dawn said that the campus is beautiful. Like, if you haven't been there, it is actually difficult, I think, to stress enough. That it's difficult to imagine how nice of a, like, it feels like an old European city in many ways, and it's like, I can't believe I get to live here. So that I took, I don't know, 3-ish classes a quarter, but I also didn't want to overdo it because I think it is also very important that I got to sit down with professors and talk to them in different, I went to the African Studies department. I went to the people doing social media research. I went, just these different sort of buckets of places that I could find. And they in turn would invite me to speak and give lectures, et cetera. And then I really just wanted to spend a lot of time with the cohort. And, like we've already talked about, there were some official groups that were not official, but some ad hoc groups we put together, the fellowships programming, but also just we did a lot of hanging out in a way that was extremely meaningful. My wife also came. She's a doctor that was working in Seattle, so she was able to go back and forth and do like a full quarter and a little bit. So she also made use of the classes. She took a data journalism class because she wanted to learn more coding. She took a Swahili class because most of her work is in Kenya, things like that. So, and then, she would engage with as much of the fellowship activities as she was able to as well.
So that's a great thing to mention, which is about Janelle, who, so fellows, we definitely encourage you to bring your families, and so spouses and partners sometimes are here for the whole time. So some people's spouse or partner, and sometimes they're working and coming in and out, and that's possible too. So it's not all or nothing. And then they can be really part of the group as well, right? So that's been I mean, I think every class, and yours is no exception. There are spouses and partners who are like, wait, who's the fellow? We're all in one big group. So great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Ooh, lots of questions. We talked about the day-to-day experience of a fellow. For the question, okay, this is for me. For the question, please tell us more about yourself. Should it be related to the topic I want to research, or should it be more about me and my background? You've already talked about the questions about your research and your journalism challenge. We want to know about you. We're spending the year with you. We'd like to know who you are. We'd like to know what you care about, what your passions are, what your background what you bring from your background to this experience, your authentic self. We don't want people to think, well, they want people who are X or Y or Z, but instead, it's really who are you? So we can get to know how this fellowship might be right for you and what you would bring to the cohort. So that's a question we often ask is, what do you want to get from the cohort and what do you want to bring to the cohort? So, all right, let's see. How much of the work of the JSK Fellowship is designed for collaboration and co-work among fellows versus independent work or research? So it's a mix, and then I'd ask Peter to jump in here for his experience, share his experience. So we have at least twice a week get-togethers with the fellows. We have speakers, we have fellows giving talks on their own journalism background called backstories, which are every year a big hit because you're getting to know the background of the people you're spending a year with that you wouldn't know in another way. We do workshops, as I mentioned, on leadership, on public speaking. We've done some on business models, other kinds of things. And so those are all together. And then, as Peter said, people get together every year is a little different on their own kind of interest groups. Also, lots of dinners and hikes. The current class has gone camping. They've hiked around San Francisco and Land's End. They went on a ski trip already. They're very tight in a quick way. So there's that kind of group. And then as far as independent versus project versus team, you certainly are pursuing your own individual interests, but sometimes someone else has that as well. So they might want to come with you and do that. So it is definitely a mix. What does that question spur on for you, Peter?
I think you mostly covered it. I mean, I think even if you're a very, independent person who just want to sort of puts their head down and work, I think, you can also, what's nice is that there's always a fellow that you can say, hey, can I grab you? Does this make sense to you? What do you think? There's always someone to bounce ideas off of if your question is mostly about, the project itself. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, past that, I mean, I don't know what to say that we haven't already said.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. I see a question just following up about spouses. So there is much of the campus is available to spouses and partners, but there are a few places that that is not open. The Graduate School of Business is not open to spouses and partners of fellows. It's not open to partners and fellow and spouses of Graduate School of Business students either. So we don't have we can't get that. But there is a very parallel, I call it the shadow GSB, called the Management Science and Engineering program at Stanford in the engineering department that's really got some similar things that you might want if you're trying to go to the GSB. And that is things like public speaking and negotiations. And so there's some things like that that are also taught in a different place. So we help spouses try to get what they need out of Stanford. Okay.
I would say, like, in the same way that
Yeah.
fellows have very different experiences, spouses also have very different ways that they took advantage of it. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife took classes, but there were probably the person in our cohort that I was the most jealous of was one spouse who would drop the kids off at school, do some work for his day job, and then look up like a free lunch lecture at Stanford and do that like every day and just like hear from some expert and I was like, you are getting such a broader education than I am getting here. It was amazing. And free food to boot. So who could complain? But everyone could do it a little bit different because there's so many different ways that there's a lot to offer.
That's a great example. And there is a free lunch every day somewhere at Stanford with a great speaker. And so it's a very big and decentralized campus. So so you can tap into Stanford, and some fellows are doing a version of that as well. So thinking about working on their journalism challenge, but also what's a great speaker that's happening today that I want to know from the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies on the latest, what's going on in Ukraine, or the Africa Roundtable, or yeah. things going on in latest research in AI. So all those things are happening, and so people can tap into those. And so that's a great way to do that. Okay, let's see. Okay, to what extent could we collaborate with Stanford professors to conduct research if faculty was interested? So that has happened in some years and not every year, perhaps. And it's really up to the relationship building between you and a professor if there's something you want to work on. I would only caution that our program is not a research or a academic program, so that would be something you'd want to do in on the side of what you're working on, or it could be part of what your project is, but we're not looking for fellows to be academics. So that would be a kind of case by case, and I would urge the fellow to talk with their advisor about how best to navigate that. Okay. Okay, let's see. Can you describe what makes a winning fellowship research topic? So again, we're not doing research, we're the doing fellowship. So it is a journalism challenge that you're looking to try to find answers to and solve. And I would say the best ones, you could go to our page where the fellows are. Our fellows are listed. And our alumni are listed. The fellows this year are on our website, 2024 Fellows, and you can look and see what are they working on. And all of those people are working on things that we care about and that they care about. So those are great examples. Okay. Is there a capstone or some final artifact that JSK looks for fellows to complete by the end of the fellowship? So yes and no. We ask fellows, as Peter and I were talking about, to do a medium post a quarter, and finding ways to share your work and share your experience throughout the fellowship is really what we want. And so there's not like a white paper or something that you do at the final end, because really the project is also you. You are something we're investing in, and excuse me. And so the idea is that you're building your leadership skills, your confidence to do great work in journalism. You're sharing that work, and then going forward, the capstone is going to be your career. What are you able to do with that? Okay. This is a good question, Peter. I want to talk with you about. As fellows transition out of the program, is there bridge support offered for participants re-entering the professional world, seeking? So we connect those. Let's talk about the alumni experience a little bit. You were at our alumni reunion this summer. We have one usually every 4 years, and then because of pandemic, it was a little longer. So we also connect with people on alumni and helping them with, I think I've written you a letter of recommendation for something, at least one. So what are the kind of things that you get out of being an alum that is helpful to you, both from the program's support and alumni connections?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there is a sort of active Facebook group as well. And maybe that's worth talking about a little bit. But for me personally, I mean, yeah, I think, my main goal coming out of the fellowship was getting back to my nonprofit and figuring out fundraising, et cetera. And Dawn and the other directors had a lot of advice and thoughts on that, and sort of like re-entering that world. And they, I went to ONA for a year or two following coming out of the fellowship, because also that, then we went into the pandemic. And I would I would sort of like plant myself at the JSK booth there. And I think I gave a little talk at one of them, but just sort of, again, like pick the brains of the directors of the program, the staff of the program, and other alumni coming by, and just sort of like keep that sort of like that chance to run ideas by them, et cetera. And I think that can happen in a virtual way too. And it certainly happens for me within my own cohort. Like I said, we're very close. And then, yeah, Dawn has written, recommendation letter, reference letters for me, et cetera, which I really appreciate. Thank you, John, and things along those lines.
Yeah. And just thinking about for a minute the alumni reunion we had, which was the 10th one we've had, and we had about 400 people there. One really memorable moment element for me is someone in your class got married at the reunion.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's some magical things can happen. What was your impression of at the reunion? Just these are people from 1966 to 2004. And did you meet people you had not before? And what?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard to tear ourselves away from our own class because
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it was really great to meet a lot of the fellows from over the years and hear what they had been working on. I forget what you all called it, but the conversation thing where two of us who did not know each other were sort of interviewing each other.
JSK Voices. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was an audio recording of that, and
Yeah.
I forget her name right now, but the woman I was paired with who does news specifically for people crossing the border from Mexico into the US. I mean, such a cool project. It was so cool to learn from her, and that was awesome. And there was something else I was going to say on that. Oh,
Yeah, that was Patricia
yeah,
Mercado Sanchez. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, just so great to have everyone gathered in one place. And then yeah, we have a Russian journalist in exile in our group, and he and his now wife, they were that kind of thing where you kind of forgot who was the fellow and who were not. But they were able to come to Stanford, and my wife performed their wedding ceremony. So if you want evidence of how close we are, there you go. But yeah, it was a magical thing to get to come back to the campus a few years later. So
That's great. I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned early on about as a photojournalist, as a visual person, feeling sometimes, I think, in the field a little bit like, how do you make? I'm not going to. I'll let you say more about it. But how to feel confident in your work and your role and the impacts that you can have in journalism. And so, just wondering about. And you had there was another photojournalist in your class, so there were two. Was there something particular that you got out of the fellowship being a photojournalist, being a visual person? And is there something that that people who are applying, who are visual people, should know about the program?
well, one quick story that I'll say, going back to why you should definitely apply, because you just never know, is that on the way out of my interview, I happened to see that the other photojournalist was in the waiting room, and I was like, I just blew that interview. They're only going to take one of us. He's definitely going to get it. Like, I should just stop thinking about this right now. And then they accepted both of us, and that was extremely exciting. And he's a good friend, and so we got to do it together. So that was awesome. But yeah, I would just say, I mean, if there are visual folks, especially visual folks on this call who are in newsrooms, or if you're freelance, you're very often sort of in this like service role, right? Where someone calls you and says, the story exists, now it needs a photo on it. You often feel, sort of at the bottom of the barrel in the newsroom pecking order. And I guess I would just say I never once felt that at JSK from my cohort, from obviously, the staff, from people at Stanford who I was, going to and talking to. And it was really an incredible thing to feel like instead of that thing where we just provide a service while everyone else is doing the journalism, there were people in our group who ran the Paradise Papers investigation and all this stuff. And they deeply valued our creativity, our sort of visual thinking, our outside the box approach. And maybe it's sad that we need to be validated in that way, but it was extremely validating. So and I've really, I've carried that with me from that point on.
Great. Thank you. Well, yeah, we couldn't decide between the two of you. It didn't have to be only two. So okay, let's see what questions we haven't gotten to yet. Okay. can you give some examples of how the program has been tailored to the projects and backgrounds of Pacific Fellows? So I would say we do evolve our program every year to think about who's in the class and how we might help them. That's a multi-layered, there's not a great one answer for that question, but we have brought in speakers who might be of interest to people who have, journalism challenges that they're working on that might be different from the year before. We have certainly, so one of the things that's revived, I'm happy to say, after the pandemic is some of the international fellows have been giving talks on campus, and we've been helping with that because they're a great value to the campus. So our program helps the fellows as they're trying to do talks on campus. That's one of the things. Excuse me, losing my voice today. Let's see. Okay, here is about visual applicants. Okay, this is a Peter question. This is good. So the application asks for one sample. Can the sample be a portfolio page that shows a range of work? Did you just send one photo, Peter? Do you remember what you sent?
Well, I know I didn't just send one photo. I guess Dawn, you'd have to answer how the application is worded. But what I recall doing is, just because I'm sure it has changed from when I applied, but what I recall doing is taking several larger projects. For example, there's an Everyday Africa book, and it's, a physical printed book, but I also have it in full PDF form, etc. And so I took those larger projects and just edited them down to a core sample PDF that just, got the idea across, got the main points across. So maybe instead of, this 300-page photo book, I included, a 10-page sort of sample, that kind of thing. I don't know if it asks for one sample. I don't know if there's a way to combine a couple of different works together, or
Yeah. I think this specific question, I would ask you this, and again, if we don't get to a couple of the questions, because we're about 10 minutes left, I'd really encourage you to write to us. And our email is jskfellowships@stanford.edu. It's over everywhere on our website. And that email goes to a human, not a bot. It is answered by Mary Beth or Pam Maples or one of us. So if you ask questions about specifically of things like that, about how you want to uploading samples of your work, there is on our Become a Fellow page a application preview. If you haven't opened one yet, but I would encourage you to open an application. Okay, let's see. So Peter, I was going to ask you about just your, so you mentioned the campus, and I just want to talk a little bit about, there's classes and there's your cohort. It is a gorgeous place. What are some things you did on or tapped into on campus that you might not have, known about before, or you think would be great to highlight on the Stanford campus?
Well, there's a meditation center that's really wonderful. There are a few different sort of wooded areas right on the campus that are sort of great, just like when you're like, I have 40 minutes between classes and I've got my lunch, and just to like sit and have that kind of like space in the midst of your day and in the midst of a campus is amazing. I did a lot. I biked everywhere, and it's really set up for that. Although there's a horde of students who are also biking everywhere. That's the biggest obstacle. But and then there's places like the Dish, which is the Stanford Dish. It's a running trail, hiking trail that's basically right adjacent to, I guess technically part of campus, but adjacent to like main buildings, etc. So I just enjoyed like being able to be a little bit outdoorsy, but just in the process of day-to-day life. That was really special for me.
Yeah. It's a giant campus, and so you can just bike, walk. It's giant, but you can't get across.
With statue gardens outside there. There's just tons of cool stuff.
Over the holiday, I mean, I'm still going to places that I haven't been to in a while. And over the holiday, after you went to the Cactus Garden at all, but it's for people who it's a very beautiful spot that's kind of off on a corner. So things like that, you go, oh, that exists over there. They're always,
That's where they got married, is in the Cactus
oh, they
Garden.
got
Yeah.
married at the Cactus Garden. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, well, so I picked the right place. It was a very nice place. And the pool, I will have to say, just personally, that is one of my favorite spots. The Stanford pools, which somebody else takes care of it and you don't have to. And it's available for you many, many hours, and it's the water's gorgeous and the place is wonderful. It's a great way to get fit and relax. Okay. We just have a few more minutes left. I'm going to look through the last questions. Okay. Here is one that just came in. How time consuming was it to participate in the program as well as take classes? Did you have a comparable amount of downtime as you would in your regular career? Well, let me just give a little pitch here at the beginning, and then I would like to ask you. So it's not a degree program, so taking classes is obviously optional and not you're not getting a grade or a degree. So as far as being time consuming, it's kind of as much as you want to fit it in. But how did you it said, did you have a comparable amount of downtime as you would in your regular career? Did you have downtime in your career? I don't
Yeah, I would
think.
say well, in some ways, I had more downtime in
Oh,
the fellow in the fellowship, just
yeah,
because
yeah,
you're auditing the classes, right? So you
yeah,
don't have to do all the assignments, et cetera, depending on what the class is.
right.
And Dawn and Pam, I remember them telling us repeatedly not to take too many classes. Like it's very tempting to take all the classes of everything you're interested in because you're at Stanford, right? And
Right.
you've only got X amount of time to do it. But the truth is that they are very smart. And so when they told us that less is more, they were right. Because then you really get to soak it all in and enjoy what you are, the classes you are taking and the other opportunities that do arise. So the quick answer is like, it for the most part, it was a very manageable schedule and I do not have in my work outside.
Right, right,
Oh, I
exactly.
froze.
That's all right. You froze. We heard you, I think. You said it was a manageable schedule and yeah. Um, and right, and to not taking too many classes, I will just make the little pitch here before we get down to closing shortly. Yeah, there are some fabulous classes, and there are classes that then you could have taught, right? Because you're at a university where it's a fair amount is geared toward 18-year-olds who don't have the experience you do. So there's some classes that you wouldn't even need to take. People say, oh, I should take that because I'm a journalist and I want to take this. It's like, you know what? You could teach that. You don't need that. You could try something totally different. Um, that would help you in a new way. Right. Okay. Let's see if we have any last question or two, and then okay. I'm gonna see, and then I have one last little message. Well, Peter, do you have any kind of final thoughts before I give a little closing here? About what would you recommend to people who are here at this webinar?
So, I mean, apply. I mean, it was life-changing. It really, it helped me in all the ways I've described. It helped me kind of get into the role that I'm in today. And so and it was just a blast. It was just a lot of fun and a lot of interesting stuff all at once. And it's a very rare opportunity. So please, please, please get the application in.
Great. Okay. I'm going to answer one more here. Any advice on honing your application question and area of focus? So um, this is a very common question and a good one, which is people are thinking, okay, what's the winning answer here? And really the winning answer is what is compelling for you, not what's compelling for us. So what do you really think you would like to focus on? What is a burning question that you're think journalism needs to answer that you feel like you can have a chance to help. So you want to not have it be so big so that it's not doable, but it also is of import. So thinking about your life, your career, one of the things that I found people have done, applicants have done, excuse me, had a conversation with a good friend and talked about it, and then someone would say, "Oh, that you just said that. Here's what you're caring about. Here's what you're really passionate about." So that's a way to hone and the focus of your question. Okay. So we're almost done. We want to thank everybody for being here. We want to thank Peter DiCampo. It's great to see you, Peter. Have a chance to catch up.
Nice to see you.
Great to see you. Yeah. So here's an important message. Do not miss this opportunity. Your future self is going to thank you for applying for this. We had some QR codes there. We also, you can just go to our website and check out our Become a Fellow page, which has not only a preview of the application, but a page on the Journalism Fellowship Experience. I would encourage you also to go to the Medium posts of fellows from this year and last year to really hear and read about what they're exploring and what it's like to be a fellow. We have a FAQ. It's a very detailed FAQ, everything we could think about, and we add questions and answers as we get them, new ones that come up. We have links to our JSK YouTube channel, which is going to have this. We're going to get this posted up pretty quickly. We'll also have Peter's video from his Medium post on being a creative person, how to be creative at Stanford, and what he learned. We also have interviews with alumni in some of those YouTube channels, and really thinking about how to get the experience, get a sense of the experience. So follow us on social media. We are at JSK everywhere. Oh, that's right, Peter, you mentioned the JSK Alumni Facebook group. There's also a WhatsApp group now for alumni, and people are on LinkedIn as well. We are sort of on Twitter. I'm not going to go there. But as a alumni group, we have a Facebook special group and a WhatsApp group that was very active. The Latin Americans are super active in that group. Some of the folks that were from the alumni reunion got together and we just expanded that whole group. So there's ways for you to connect as an alumni. So thank you. We look forward to reading your application, and have a great day. Thanks, Peter, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.